Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are at. Hope you're having a fantastic day. It's SoulSaint here, and we got another banger for you. So we were talking about how you're climbing up and you're pushing for Doom Tower or in general wave clear content. And what I mean by wave clear content is like content where there's a boss at the end, or the content itself, whatever you're progressing through, has stages where you're having multiple rounds where there's nothing but a wave of enemies. So waves, right? In this particular format where we're doing like Doom Tower progression, we're trying to get through all the hard content for various resources to unlock secret rooms, whatever the case may be, whatever you're trying to push towards. Having the ability to clear through multiple ways very, very effectively is like a fast way to progress pushing through Doom Tower. And I utilize one of the champions that are best well known for one of the best wave clearers in the game, which is Seer. And a lot of her components are based off of not only having buffs but debuffs on the enemy team, and then utilizing that with her Karma Burn ability that you see on the screen to enable a lot of maximum enemy HP damage. So we're trying to pop and then keep it moving, right? And we'll utilize our buffs as well as our debuffs to facilitate that, right? In particular, the two stars that enable Seer as well as disable the enemy are like someone like Duchess, for example, who can provide some backup in case we have some stumbles along the way, and it does happen. As well as Lydia, who not only disables the enemies with like decreased defense and weaken, but she also buffs up too as well. So it's like a 2-for-1, right? She's one of the best that normally is connected or tethered towards the Seer clear comps, right? We're gonna start the run, and basically the main thing I'm gonna try to illustrate here is that buffs plus debuffs slam with the Karma Burn is pretty much the way it goes. Now we have two Renegades that are not even level 60. I don't even think they have Masteries, as a matter of fact. They're also designed to give your team resets. So wave 1, they do their normal rotation and they burn their abilities. Wave 2, one of them resets, and then wave 3, one of them resets. But they're all doing the exact same thing for basically quick clears. Okay, so we're gonna do the run, and I want to show you guys how it works, and then I'll show you some stats as well as some additional configurations to make it really slam here. But the main premise is boom, you see that Karma Burn. Now in this wave it gets a little dicey because we do have like a 1-turn cooldown here with Renegades only resetting two turn durations, and of course Seer has to get through it. But I don't know if you could tell, Karma Burn, we're getting through it just fine without too much of an issue. Now I will say this, one of the things you got to watch out for is for champions that do have like a decent amount of speed, especially when you're progressing through different content. There's going to be different speed variations, so you want to do your groundwork. Look at maybe Hell Hades website or some other website that can give you some idea of like some of the stats that these enemy waves are going to have. But for the most part, the main premise is that we're getting our setup, which is the buff side of things, as well as the resets to re-enable us, to cycle us through those abilities again, right? So like our Renegade number 2 is finally at the point where we're getting the reset, right? And now the enemy wave is going a little bit here, and that's kind of a little bit of a dangerous scenario. We still have 2 other people that are going to get their turn, so we may see one of our champions die. But we do have the buffs there from Lydia, and now we get buffs number 2, or the second set of buffs from our Duchess, who is also giving us a little bit more to make sure that this Karma Burn, which we're about to pop here, fully just locks out the team. I use this team pretty much across the board, all the way up through most of the Doom Tower until we start getting to some of the higher and harder stages. And for me, what I've noticed since every single rotation I've done, it's roughly around like the 80s and 90s and up where it starts to get a little more challenging. And I make slight variations to my team, but the core concept with Seer stays the same no matter what. Now, I did want to talk to you guys about how it's set up. Basically, the long and short of it is that we prioritize around Karma Burn, with a delay in between round 2 and round 3 to give us time to use our clan banner. And the reason why is because of the resetters we're using. So I did say earlier that Renegade only resets an enemy's cooldowns, or our team's cooldown, excuse me, by 2 turns, and Karma Burn is on a 4-turn cooldown, which means that there's a 1-turn delay that we have to watch out for, right? Utilizing that in mind, I have to stall for basically 1 turn in between each iteration of Karma Burn. And what I choose to do with Seer is I give them an extra buff. Maybe we get a little extra weaken off. I use like nullification if it's available, which gives us block active skills. Duchess kind of free autos there, or if there's someone that does get down in certain events, it does slow down the run a little bit, but we do have that bounce back mechanic with Spectral Rebirth. And of course, we have the other Renegade on stall or on basically on standby until we get to the next wave, right? Now, in terms of stats, the main thing to aspire for is that you understand that the scaling of Karma Burn is based off of the buffs you have, with the amount of crit damage versus someone who, and depending on your target, their stats, which is affected by weaken or decreased defense specifically. Those two buffs allow your Karma Burn to do a little bit more damage. So all those factors play in mind. Another additional factor, which would be the enemy having buffs, like later down the road, we've gone against compositions where they have like Siffies that are fast and they sometimes lap or interrupt my rotation, with like Seer being a little bit more on the slower side. Having those little extra buffs from the enemy side of things means that maybe investing into a little bit more accuracy to take those buffs and benefit from them may be a little bit more opportune, right? But those are pretty much the quick factors I do it. Now, I did want to talk about the scenarios where this team does not work. And like I said, as we go up higher, the stat number requirements or what we go against plays a factor into the efficiency of this team. And what I try to do is I slowly work my way out of the Renegades, since they're not really the best developed and they're very squishy. They're really only there just to do their reset, and that's it. Sometimes whenever a boss or a wave does their, that one wave that we have that salt time, they do get their hits off like you saw, they end up getting killed, and that does affect the performance of the team to a point where the rotation changes, and next thing you know, you may see some failures because of the third round, you're not coming in as ideal as you wanted to, or that Renegade that you needed to be available for that to effectively go the way it does rotation-wise is down. So what I typically do is I start removing one Renegade at a time. Let's see if I can get away with this. Then I add maybe another buffer or another Reser who can keep the team going, some form of sustain maybe. I've also added other control options. Remember, we only need that one wave handled, so maybe in this first wave I use someone like Ragash, who buffs up the team going into, wave 1, but in wave 2, he uses his 8-2, which is the thing that has like a stun in it, for example, right? As well as decreased defense. So it gives you a little bit of like, okay, while we're waiting for our stuff to cool down or recycle, especially like in round 3, where we have to kind of like hard wait for our abilities to come back up, having that little bit of extra breadth of utility does pay off tremendously. So I use champions like Ragash as a filler, or some kind of control champion, like for example Vizix. Whenever I'm going against an enemy wave that has like a lot of speed, I like to bring in someone like Vizix because she has decreased speed as well as that provoke. So we're stopping them from getting their turns, as well as, or using their normal rotation and only using their default skill. And then on top of that, we're slowing them down. So like champions like those that have some form of interrupt, but as well as buffs on top of that. I didn't even talk about that, but like as well as slowing down the enemy, having Ally Protect, which is another buff that you can use for Seer Strip, which means that her damage is amplified. Having that little bit of association, that one that could do both of that. Some control, maybe a little buffs on the side, is an extra staple in there. Now, this actually goes perfectly in tandem with like some champions that you can acquire, right? I talk about Vizix. Everybody will get a Vizix as long as you're logging in daily. But we'll point to something that you can actually farm towards as you're progressing through Doom Tower, which is Archmage Helmut. Not only does he provide good buffs for your team, but he also provides A2 stun, which the chance is scales based off of how many books you're on. It is a little book heavy, but as you look up the numbers, so 65, 70, 75% chance to place a stun is really good. And then if it doesn't land, you also have a chance of affecting their turn meter, which gives you just a little bit more momentum going forward. So great options for you to use like your team compositions in mind when you're playing with this. So control, buffs, debuffs, let Seer nuke, and then just keep the rotation going. And you enable that by doing Renegade, for example, who's one of like your base void rares for resetters. And then if you want to scale it up, I think that like Yumiko, for example, would be another great addition to this. As a matter of fact, if I had a Yumiko, I would not be using a Renegade, but Yumiko, for example, with her A3, reduces the cooldown of all skills by 3 turns, which eliminates that need for the extra turn, for example, right? That little downtime turn is completely gone. And on top of that, too, she increases the cooldowns of the enemy. So a double whammy of like, okay, you got not only protection from a control standpoint by mitigating their ability to use their abilities because you're forcing them on cooldown, but you're also bringing our team up in terms of quality too as well. So that would speed up the efficiency of the run. Instead of me opening up with like the banner on Seer, I would just go straight into the Karma Burn because everything is available. Same thing with Duchess, same thing with Lydia. Those things that are like on a 3-turn cooldown are automatically available for her to do what she's got to do. Another alternative, and this is the champion that I've been going so hard for when it comes to shard pulls recently, and I've been unlucky, is Kymar. Kymar is another one who has a full cooldown reset. Forget forget maybe having only one turn delay or you only have just enough to get there. This guy makes sure you have it, right? Not only do you have all the cooldowns reset, but it also fills the Terminator, which means that you can make him super fast and disable this on the first round, but in the second round, since he's starting at the top of the turn, automatically sets your team up to be boom, boom, boom. It's like the alley-oop into the dunk, right? So it's very, very good. And then where he plays an additional part is that he has the ability to not only remove those buffs from the enemy in the event that you have that like downtime that you're trying to prepare for, but he has a chance to control them too. So this gives you a lot of breathing room to do what you got to do. And it's still falling in line with what we're looking for. Cooldown reset, some form of control, and then just enabling your team to just pack a punch, right? I do know that there's some alternative ways to do some clears, and I think this is one way that I would like to encourage a lot of players to at least use as a reference point. Looking at global rankings, for example, in areas that you're participating in, you'll notice that there's a lot of other alternatives, such as the explosion comp that uses resetters like Kaimar, for example, or Renegade here and there, depending on what the champion pool's looking like. You do see some Yumiko's here and there. I believe she's probably going to be a little bit harder since she's a Void Legendary, but you get the idea. It's like pretty much utilizing champions that can enable a fast rotation and then replicate it across 3 different waves is pretty much ideal, right? And in particular for this one, this will be another one. I do have one Calvalex, but I'm still missing like a Xavia or Calvalex number 2, for example. There's another route where it's like poisons, exploder, reset, poisons, exploder, and then she'll use her ability, depending on how you want to offset it, into wave 3. So you'll still have those explosions basically lined up for each wave, and that's pretty much the same thing you're seeing. Or you duplicate, you double it down to a point where, depending on your champion pool, you have what you're looking for. But the idea of it is you find one strong power outlet, and then you build around that with resets in mind, so that you can do it one turn or round 1, and then you can replicate it round 2 and round 3. And that's pretty much what the Seer clear team does, as well as the poison explosion comps or whatever the case may be. If I had duplicate Seers, this would not work as well, because you still need to worry about the buff intake, and that's where maybe the poison comp with like Calvalexes that automatically do it as a part of their passives. That's a little different, it's a little bit more nuanced, but the idea is big pop, replicate. Big pop, replicate, and you can do that across multiple ways. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I did want to say, in terms of alternative options, so like for buffers, pretty much anybody that gives you like 3 turn or roughly at least 3 buffs, it would be in tandem with someone like a Duchess. I did talk about Helmut. I did talk about some other options there. For Lydia, I did use Ragash, and the performance did vary a little bit. Sometimes I would open up with the clan banner just to get the weekend out first, and then when we start with the stun into Ragash, then we would have that little delay, so that both of those debuffs are on, but we also have the buffs going into it, right? The resetters stay the same. I don't have any other resetters, so I can't really show you anything else there. But the options for Yumiko and Kaimar, if you so happen to be lucky to get them, are some variable alternatives that you can use. Additionally, Seer herself is the unique mandatory champion here, but the idea is buffs, debuffs, resetters, and then let her do her thing and she'll cook. In terms of gear, and I wanted to show you guys this in terms of like maybe some stats to look forward to, my Lydia is prepped up primarily to be efficient at certain speeds in content like Dragon, Hard Mode 10, as well as Spider. She's supposed to be efficient there, so like the speeds there are pretty accurate, as well as the accuracies. You want her to land those debuffs. That's her core point. And then anywhere else, if you want to build her damage oriented, you could do there, or you could build her survivor oriented, which is I happily accidented getting towards. Then there's some viability there. Seer is pretty much ideally you want to go stats versus sets first in terms of getting the most you can here, but then eventually as you progress down the road and your gear becomes of higher quality, you want to start looking for ignore percentage defenses such as Savage, Lethal, Cruelty, for example. So even though I'm not fully there yet, if I got a pair of crit damage gloves that had a decent amount of speed and maybe some crit rate and some attack percent in there, that would be an easy slot in where this build would go up another level, right? And of course, always the value of the gear, improving that too as well to go up another step would be ideal. But 100% crit rate, 100% crit damage, and then of course having her to go at the end of the turn so that everybody else can do what they need to do for their kits to enable her to slam is pretty much the idea. And then a small caveat. Now, I am using my PvP-oriented Duchess, so she is using Bolster, and that does kind of hamper the ability for Seer to use an additional buff. Thankfully, the stats that I have her in right now are pretty decent, but a caveat that I would like to bring to you guys is the more buffs you have on your team, the more damage you do, right? So incorporating like a shield set, for example, on one of my renegades is something I did do to give Seer a little bit more damage, right? Keep in mind, bolster would combine the two. So if you have one with the shield, one with bolster, like how you saw mine, what would end up happening is both shields get protected, and Seer can't strip a protected buff. So that makes the buff value itself go down tremendously. But thankfully, my damage is adequate enough to a point where one pop solves all problems. So just keep that in mind in like different ways you can bring it up. I did use Mithril in a couple rotations where I would drop one of my renegades so that she would help not only through like a pseudo way of like control. Whenever an enemy with Hex attacks our team, there's a chance to petrify, which gives you more time because they lose a turn as a response of it, as well as shielding and strengthening, which is basically another set of buffs you can get value from. And I didn't even mention the increased defense and increased defense that you increased defense and increased attack that you would get from the A2. In tandem with all the other buffs, also enables someone like Seer to go through. So another acquirable champion over time as you invest into Hydra will give you this champion, right? So these are all champions that you can use. Another one I didn't actually notate that would be like a good alternative would be someone like your Carl. His Glaciate gives you the ability to freeze everybody, which is that one turn giving you a chance to do what you got to do. He does provide increased speed, which is a little redundant when you have someone like Lydia, but he is an alternative approach to like maybe some form of control. But the idea is buffs, control, debuffs, nuke from Seer, reset. And then you just rinse and repeat that until you finish up the entire wave. Anyways, I hope this video finds you successful in your endeavors. If you have any questions about different strategies you would like to use in Doom Tower or that you would like for me to showcase, please feel free to let me know in the comments below. As well as, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe yourself. If you ever have time and you're interested in seeing some of the shenanigans we're getting into or any of the investments we're currently working on projects-wise, feel free to tune into my live stream on twitch.tv/SoulSaint. That's with a 0. We're normally live Tuesdays through Fridays, getting into some kind of craziness or playing variety for that matter. Feel free to be a part of the community and join us in our endeavors there. And with that being said, I hope you all have a great and fantastic day. And always, always remember, stay ascended.